Oh, hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for your patience and understanding. Technology sometimes can uh, slow down the process, but we're on the right track, and I think you'll enjoy today's presentation. Welcome. My name is Christy Weeks, and I'm the Digital Media Manager for Harmony Foundation. Thank you for joining us again. We hope you're all safe and well. Today's presentation, Doctors and Nurses and Pilots, Oh My, Working with Impaired Professionals, is presented by Chip Glaze, founder and director of First Call Behavioral Services. I'm going to run through these next few slides pretty quickly, just because I think everybody is pretty familiar with us. We are up in the Rocky Mountains, just outside of Estes Park. We're a residential rehab center. We believe in long-term recovery from alcohol and drug abuse is possible. We have over 50 years of experience treating addiction and have fostered a generation of long-term recovery for those struggling with addiction, and we support our clients and their families for a lifetime. We do have 70 beds. We also have a new IOP program, so if you'd like more information about that, be sure to send me an email and I'll get you connected. We do offer an evidence-based 12-step program that is gender responsive. And if you need anything else or looking for more information, please jump on our website, harmonyfoundationinc.com, or you can call our admissions staff at 866-686-7867. We do have new policies in place to address the COVID-19 issues. Please feel free to revisit this recording when I post it online, or you can find this on our website as well. Any questions can be directed to Gina Thorne. She's our Chief Marketing Officer, gthorne@harmonyfoundationinc.com, and she'll be able to help you out with that. A few housekeeping things real quick. We do record these and they will be posted on our website, so you can revisit them. At that point, the CEU will not be available. We do keep track of how long somebody is in this recording. You must be present for 45 minutes. Today, we will make sure everybody involved gets addressed, since it was a technical issue on my part. So please, no worries. Just give us to the end of day on Friday to get you that certificate, and it will come via email. And if you don't receive it by the end of day Friday, please reach out to me, cweeks, harmonyfoundationinc.com. We want to thank Chip Glaze and First Call Behavioral Health Services for joining us today. If you would like more information after this, you can visit his website at www.firstcallbhs.com, and he will provide more information along the way as well. He will be answering questions during the presentation, so feel free to throw those up in the chat box, and we will absolutely get those addressed along the way. So Chip Glaze, founder director, First Call Behavioral Services. He received his BS, MS, and JD from Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi. He is a licensed attorney and licensed marriage and family therapist with extensive experience in behavioral health counseling, family therapy, and crisis intervention with professionals. He speaks nationally on topics ranging from working with impaired professionals, communication and de-escalation in the professional setting, and suicide prevention. Glaze is a native to Colorado. I love that. Before moving to Colorado in January 2019, Chip served as the director of the Mississippi Bar Lawyers and Judges Assistance Program from 2011 to 2018. And at this time, I will stop talking so we can get to the good stuff and let Chip share his screen, and he can take over from here on out. Welcome, Chip.
Thank you very much. I am, I think, getting where I'm supposed to be. I'm assuming Christy will tell me if I am not.
You are exactly where you need to be. All looks good on my side.
Sweet, thanks. So hey everybody, I'm sorry. I'm sure that part of the delay was me being somewhat new to this, but I'm glad you all had the patience to hang with us for a few minutes. I'm going to zip through the introductory stuff so we can actually get into the meat of what I wanted to talk to you about today. As Christy said, this really will work better as a conversation. I don't want to listen to me lecture for the next 40 minutes, and I don't think you do either. Uh, if you have a question, please don't leave with it. If we do have to put it off, please contact me and let me know what it is that I've said that you may want to know more about. And it's important to know that I don't speak on behalf of any doctor's program, nurses program, or even lawyer's program at this point. I have spent the last 13 years working in lawyer assistance. I left lawyers out of the title so as not to stifle interest in the presentation, but that's where most of my experience is. I've worked with doctors and nurses in contract settings in actual counseling centers. The objectives, you've all seen those, and we're going to try to give you a little content on each one of those. I wanted to open with just a few things, and again, these are my thoughts as someone to whom professionals programs have been marketed for a long time. The first thing I would say is that if you don't currently have a professionals program, there's nothing wrong with your treatment center. You're probably running a great program, and having a professionals program may or may not be something you want to do, but it is not a necessity. I'm much more interested in a program that provides high quality treatment as opposed to them being able to tell me this is a professionals program. And my colleagues, I did some research. I checked with colleagues in the PHP field and also in the lawyer assistance field, and they feel the same way. It's great if you've got a professionals program, but we're really more interested in making sure that the treatment is high quality. And if you are in the process of putting up a professionals program, my advice to you would be invest on the front end. Make sure you're going to do it well. Make sure that you've got the resources, the staffing, you've got the relationships in place, because what you don't want to do is have your business communication folks out there telling people you've got a professionals program and you're not ready, and you won't get another shot with some of these folks. So make sure you've got things in place and understand on the front end, this can be an adversarial and even litigious population to serve. I am a person in long-term recovery, so I am an impaired lawyer by definition in recovery. And I can tell you, over 13 years of dealing with them, it's not always easy. They are a difficult population, as are physicians and nurses, pilots. Just in terms of, so we're all on the same page, this is what the traditional professionals programs have been marketed for. Some will have specific programs, like we have a doctor's program or a pilot's program. Some will have a professionals program where lots of different disciplines are dropped into the same professionals programming. I think if there's something we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and the state shutdowns and all of those things, we certainly see how important our frontline medical people are, but we're also seeing how important some other populations are. We're being given a fresh reminder. So I think it's important to know that maybe not the doctors, it may not be the doctors that you're wanting to serve. Maybe you want to serve pilots. Maybe you want to serve law enforcement. Those are great specialties to be in. Just a little bit about the history. Um, they were talking about impaired physicians and trying to deal with them back as early as 58. The most important thing you need to know about doctors, and this is based on my experience, but also the experience of my colleagues that I interviewed for this, the FSPHP, the Federation of State Physician Health Programs, that is the gold star. If you want to work with doctors and if you want to work with top flight professionals programs, period, you need to go to their website, and it's at the end of this. You'll be able to see it. Pilots is a much more closed setting. I've interacted with PHP folks and nursing program folks. I've never met anybody who was with the pilots programs. I'm sure they're out there. Their work started in the 70s, and they are still going strong on that HIMSS program. Nurses, the 80s and early on, they were saying that we have a lot of nurses who are getting in trouble, and that trouble relates to their use of substances or psychiatric issues. And we need to have something in place. The Nursing Association said in 82, we've got to have an alternative to discipline. We can't discipline our way out of this problem. And the nurses have done a wonderful job over the years. A lot of great programs out there doing a lot of great stuff. I left the attorneys to the last. We were also doing our own thing for a while. And in 85, the ABA said, look, states need to start doing this. Organizations need to start looking at this. The ABA Commission on Lawyer Assistance Programs, which is not nearly as consistent a group as the Federation for PHPs or the nursing programs. And I'm going to talk a little more about that. One of the things that I wanted to start with, because if you're doing professionals programming, why is it that you're in that field? When people heard that I worked with lawyers, they assumed that everybody I worked with used powder cocaine and drank really good scotch. That is not the case. The insurance coverage, frequently is gone by the time lawyers arrived in my office. And so it was not easy money to offer professionals programming. And I've already said they can be a very difficult population. I think when we are looking at why do we have this programming, obviously we start with safety, and we could end there and there would be sufficient rationale for having these programs. I don't know about you, but ever since I saw the movie Flight with Denzel Washington, I would highly commend it to you as something that it's a little rough, but it's a pretty clear representation of an impaired professional. But since I saw that movie, I pay attention to who's sitting in the cockpit and what they look like as I board a plane. I want that person in that jump seat there to be going through that list coherently and competently and expertly, because our safety's in their hands. I don't know how many of you have been a party litigant. I have been in lots of different areas of litigation. I've litigated cases. I've been a party litigant. If one of those two people standing before that judge is representing your interests, whether that's your property interests, whether that's your life and liberty interests, you want those people to be competent and have the skill. You don't have to look far in the ethical rules for lawyers to see that it's clear an impaired lawyer runs afoul of the rules pretty quickly. Certainly with doctors, we're right back to safety again. We want our physicians, we want our medical staff, nurses to be healthy themselves so that they can effectively do their job taking care of the public. One of the things that I think is especially important with all these groups and other groups, you think about clergy, you think about, again, law enforcement folks, the duties that those people have to the people they serve, the fiduciary capacity in which a lot of these folks serve, their impairment can create significant harm, sometimes irreparable harm. And even if it is not something that's irreparable, it can be very costly to undo something that has been done poorly. And I think the underlying reason, aside from safety and boundaries and ethics, all those things, these historically have been community leaders. They're the people who sit on your boards. They're the people who, are the people that the community looks to. Now, whether or not that's right, whether or not we've had our priorities in the right place, I don't know, and we're not here to discuss that today. But I think if we have, I know that being in Mississippi during and after the jackpot justice scandals and some of the big legal scandals that happened in Mississippi, people lose faith in the system. And when people lose faith in the system, it's very difficult to regain that. Again, I think this difficult time we've been going through together is showing us that the community really isn't held up at all points by some of the folks that we thought held it up. But certainly we recognize that that's something that's been there. I think the last thing that we look at as to why we do this is it works. This is a 2009 study. I would again commend it to you as something, if you're doing this work, you want to be familiar with this article that was by Dr. DuPont. If you've had a chance to hear Dr. DuPont or William White, these guys are pros. They know what they're doing. And, increasingly, we're recognizing as a field that we need to be doing things like what these physicians programs do. They get people to top flight treatment. They make sure that their treatment fits the facts and circumstances with which they present. And then they follow that treatment. And then they put them on a monitoring contract and they follow them. And that contract has contingencies. One of the things, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but it is certainly understandable that we put this kind of emphasis on medical professionals, that their license, their continuing livelihood can be contingent on their performance on a sober living contract. That said, we can take the information that we garner there and we can generalize it so we can generate results more like this outside the professionals field. Common characteristics that professionals have, and I tried to put them in terms of strengths. Being driven serves you well in law school. Being a high achiever, being somebody who's analytical, certainly being a zealous advocate, that is the nature of being a good lawyer. Certainly you want people who are intelligent to be taking care of your medical needs. If I started with strengths, I'm going the other way, but instead of weaknesses, I'm going to call them opportunities. Professionals can quickly get into these opportunities for change, perfectionism, drama creators, as opposed to people who help calm the drama. They can get into all or nothing thinking. They can be unduly adversarial. When I speak to groups of lawyers, I talk about that person, that lawyer, that every time, good morning. Don't tell me what kind of morning it is. Everything's a fight. And everybody in the room who's actually out there practicing law knows a lawyer like that. There are lawyers who get so far into something that they can't let it go. The orders of the court, the facts and the law, none of that matters. They just can't let it go. They've lost the boundary between zealous representation and this is about me. Certainly, we've all heard stories and we've heard doctors described as medical deity. Some of the most humble people I know are doctors. They're certainly not all in that category. That said, when you hold that kind of power and you have that skill, we can lean toward that. When our lives become unmanageable, we can lean toward being, we've got to be in charge or this is not going to work correctly. Something else we've known about professionals, at least the professionals I knew, work hard, play hard. Some of us, we had to play a little harder. I myself got into recovery before I became a lawyer, but I was doing this work when I was still in active addiction, and I shuddered to think about the mistakes that I may have made, the mistakes that I certainly could have made while in active addiction. Another thing that is common in these professionals is the expectation for long hours and hard work and being at the office when everybody arrives and staying until after everybody leaves. I've been telling lawyers for years that it's really way more important that your kids know you and like you than your law partners, because your kids will be the ones that help you make end of life decisions, nursing home decisions. On a very practical note, your partners will not be there. But this was a standard that was certainly held up when I graduated law school in '02. It was kind of the expectation. Everybody's going to be shooting for being one of these guys. And don't let all that bad stuff spoil it for you. If you're going to do professionals programming, I think these are some key components based on my experience and the experience of the colleagues that I interviewed. You need somebody or multiple somebodies on your staff who knows these populations. That's not to say that you've got to have a recovering lawyer on staff. That's not to say that you've got to have a recovering doctor, nurse, pilot, whichever population you're going to serve. But you do have to have somebody that knows this population. One of the best clinicians I know is a lady who is not a lawyer herself, but she can right size a lawyer like nobody's business. You've got to have people on your staff that are not going to be, as we would say in Mississippi, that are not going to be buffaloed by the bluster, not going to be bowled over by the titles and they throw Latin at you and it sets you back. You have to be able to get in there with them. If you don't have somebody on staff, get somebody who's getting some expertise, who's learning what is common with lawyers, what's the real story behind what we're hearing, because you're going to hear all sorts of negative things about the way the disciplinary authority in this discipline is treating this person and the way the assistance program is treating this person. You need to have somebody that knows that what's actually going on. I think it's important that you ensure that your staff knows just because somebody arrives on your unit with certain letters after their name, it's not all the same. Some of those doctors got up one day and said, I got to make some changes in my life. I got to go get some treatment. Some of them held on until the professionals came in from the PHP and said, you're going to go get some treatment or you're not going to continue to practice medicine. Those are fundamentally different animals on several levels. And I can tell you that I won't name treatment centers, but on more than one occasion while working in lawyer assistance, I would get a call from a treatment center and they would say, hey, Chip, just wanted you to know Bob Smith checked in. And I would say, whoa, hold up. I don't have a release to talk to you about anybody with that name. And I would suggest that we end this phone call and you go see if you've got a release to be talking to me. Because whether or not the assistance program, the PHP has been involved on the front end, that needs to be clear. You don't need to be the entity that informs an assistance program on someone. Now, it could be part of your program to encourage one of your patients to self-report, but that's a question you've got to answer for yourself with legal counsel, I would recommend. If you're going to work with professionals, you need to have clear, ongoing relationships with the PHPs, with the lawyers programs, with the various state pilot programs. This is not something where you just put it out there because I'm going to talk about it in a moment, but they're very different entities and they have very different expectations. You need to make sure that your business development people are giving accurate information and they're not, for lack of a better term, they're not overselling. I've had marketing folks show up in my office to tell me all about their professionals program, and I would ask them questions consistent with the content that I'm giving you here. And some of them would say, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me get back to you. Others would assure me that they had all that stuff. You know, they've got professionals program. And I would find out on the back end that that was not correct information. That's something that you need to be very clear on with your folks. If you've seen one assistance program, you've seen one. They do not all behave in the same way. PHPs and LAPs are very different. The nurses and the doctors programs have much more control over their participants than do the LAPs. The LAPs and all of these programs, everybody varies by jurisdiction. So receiving a referral from the Judges and Lawyers Assistance Program in Louisiana is fundamentally different on several levels than receiving a referral from the Mississippi Lawyers and Judges Assistance Program. The Louisiana program is much more in line with a PHP. They've actually done the work to get to that level. Other programs are just trying to keep the lights on and they haven't been able to do that. As a rule, the PHPs, the nursing programs, the pilots have more control, and I think we can agree that they should. A lawyer can mess your life up, but probably can't kill you in the moment legally. This is a changing landscape. Things like length of stay. When I first came into the world of professionals programs, the doctors told their people, you will be at this treatment center for 90 days, no discussion, do not pass go, do not collect $200. And that has loosened some in recent years. Again, it's a state by state issue. So don't take that as, well, you know, they'll all put up with this or that. They won't. You know, some of them have, and you need to find out what are their expectations.
Hey, Chip,
Obviously, yes,
can I pause you for 1 second?
absolutely.
We have had a request if you could review some of the acronyms that are on the screen.
Oh, yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
PHP is Physician Health Program. LAP is the Lawyer Assistance Program. I guess I should have had that in here. ADT is Alternative to Discipline. I think that should be ATD now that I'm looking at it. The pilots programs are HIMS, Human Improvement Motivation Study. It's not something that I'm real familiar with. I did some nosing around, but it's a very insular process. The PHP, they're happy to tell you what they do. And again, the Federation of State PHPs is a great place for information. The Commission on Lawyer Assistance at the ABA, you're going to get much less clear information because of the variance in the programs. But you can contact each state's program, find out what they need. Length of stay, LOS. I was saying that historically, you know, professionals went to treatment for 90 days, and that's just the way it was. That is changing somewhat. I don't think it is something that a treatment center needs to modify their program just to please the assistance programs. If you've got a program that's working, keep what you have. That said, if you're trying to get their business, know what it is they expect. MAT, medication assisted treatment. It's a hot button topic. People disagree, and sometimes vehemently. You need to know what the professionals, organizations that you're marketing to, what is their position on the use of Suboxone and other medications post-discharge from formal treatment. My most recent discussions with PHP folks, they're still not allowing that as a rule. There are exceptions, but they're not allowing it as a rule. Fitness evaluations, so actual fitness to practice their profession, not just cleared to return to work as, you know, as Joe Public, fit to return to the practice of medicine, the practice of law. Some programs are going to require that of your facility. They are going to expect it. And if you are not in the business of providing it, you need to let them know that on the front end. Historically, finding somebody to do a fit to practice evaluation for me in Mississippi was difficult because I worked with lawyers, and lawyers like to sue people. And so there were very few doctors that were willing to do that. You are in the treatment industry, you've got those people, but be clear on whether or not that's going to be an expectation. Also, you know, what are you telling these professionals about their return to work? Is it something they need to do in stages? Is it something that needs to incorporate an intensive outpatient program? That kind of thing. Best thing I can tell you to do is affiliate with the FSPHP, the National Nurses Recovering Nurses Associations. Contact them, ask them to, you know, go and exhibit at one of their conferences. I went to the FSPHP last year and saw lots of treatment folks there. Some of you may have had your people there. Some of you may have been there. But create a relationship with these people. Don't just market to them. That if I had one piece of advice, I had I had a lot of experience with people marketing these programs, and I could tell the ones that their people knew the substance of the program and there was substance to the program. Along those lines, one of the big things when you're going to have professionals segregated in your places, you got to have a peer group. That is not one lawyer. That is not two doctors. That is, I hesitate to give a number because I'm not speaking on anyone's behalf. I would ask the professionals organizations to whom you market, what kind of numbers are you looking for in a peer group? If your program can have, 10 total professionals, great. If your program can have 10 doctors or 10 nurses or 10 lawyers, great. But you need to have that peer group. They need to be with that peer group doing specific programming, specific groups at least 3 times a week. Obviously, more is fine. But if there's one didactic group per week, that's not a professionals program, and that's not even a professionals track. That's just to have to answer questions you don't want to answer. I would caution against, and the professionals that I interviewed in preparing for this said the same, do not segregate these people totally. They don't need to be in doctors or professionals or lawyers groups all day, every day. Those of you who are in recovery, you know that some of the wisdom that you hold so dear came from unemployed painters and school teachers and any number of other professions, not just with people with letters after their name. Don't treat them as special. That's probably part of why they're in treatment, is that specialness. I mentioned earlier that doctors and nurses, their numbers are not as high as the lawyers, or I intended to mention it if I didn't. Lawyers, based on most recent research, which is consistent with earlier research, we're about twice as likely to be problematic drinking or using as the general public. We're going to be 1 in 5, where the general public's 1 in 10. Nurses and doctors, the numbers they state are roughly there, maybe a little higher. The reason that it is higher and the reason that they present in such a problematic way is their workplace performance is the thing that is maintained at the cost of all else as their life becomes unmanageable. And sometimes it has to do with accessibility to substances. If you're going to work with professionals, have your policy and procedure in place and adhere to it. This is absolutely the case of give an inch, they will take a mile. And it's a situation where if you are going to deviate from your norm, and I mean your norm for your population in general, you need to have a clear justification for why that is. If the average person coming into your treatment facility loses their cell phone, you need to have real clear reasons why professionals don't lose their cell phone. Some programs allow them to have access to work. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm saying you need to be clear about it. You need to be consistent on it. And if you're not treating them the same way you're treating your general population, there needs to be a clear reason why that's the case. And not wanting to put up with the argument doesn't need to be your rationale. That's your, as treatment professionals, you're better, you're more expert than that. I got frustrated with several programs because they did not keep me informed, but they also didn't discharge people when it was therapeutically the right thing to do. when I place someone in treatment as a lawyer assistance professional, I wanted to know that they were attending, they were participating, and if they were refusing everything, put them out. Don't keep them there. That's especially, again, if that is your policy with the general population. I'm trying to run through this because I think there's some stuff in here that I hope will be useful. Barriers to these folks showing up in your treatment center, they're just like everybody else. They've got bad information. They've got no information. They are humans. The fact that they went to professional school does not indicate a greater knowledge necessarily of the medical diseases that we're talking about. Stigma and reputation, that's a very real thing. Those of us who've been in recovery a long time, some of us feel like, we want people to know we're in recovery because that way we're not the person we used to be. That said, there is still a subset of our population that views addiction and even mental health issues that are not associated with addiction, depression, those things, as weakness. And you can't very well market yourself as the zealous advocate for others if you believe that your reputation is one of weakness. That's a therapeutic issue for sure. Job security and career advancement. Certainly, if you're on the partner track at a big law firm, this may make a difference. And those are big decisions. My default has always been, let's make the decision that keeps you alive, and we'll sort the rest out later. Practice management and case coverage. If you are a solo practitioner, finding people who are willing to step in and cover your practice, be it a law practice, be it a medical practice, that's not an easy thing to do. That's part of the work that lawyers assistance programs do, I know, helping with that. Licensure, disciplinary issues. Again, state by state, how the regulatory authorities are dealing with these issues. There are still people out there that want to, this lawyer's got a problem, well, we'll take away their law license, and then they won't be a problem for other people. That is a shrinking population, but it's still there, and that population is there in all professions. And historically, we would say to people back in the 90s, you don't have money to go to treatment. Oh, well, you've got money to buy cocaine. Yeah, that may have been the case, but we know that people are struggling. To lots of times, insurance is not available, or it's something that they've let lapse. And treatment is expensive. Dealing with their objections. Just thought I'd throw out some objections that you may have seen. Objections are way too much a part of legal training, I can assure you. Their objections are not quantitatively different, qualitatively different than those of the general population. The difference is these folks, it's part of their vocational skill set. It is a lawyer's job to figure out whether or not the existing case law supports their facts or contradicts their facts. And then they've got to make sure that their case stands on all fours. We say that in law school. This case is on all fours with the law. Or we're saying that law does not apply to this case. We're differentiating that case. Certainly doctors run through differential diagnosis, as do lawyers. all those buttons that pilots are dealing with, I'm sure there is a great deal of prioritization that they have to make decisions on quickly. It's not different, but it may feel like it's on steroids because they do it for a living. Terminal uniqueness, if you've been in the field for more than half a day, you are getting familiar with this term. This is my favorite meme related to terminal uniqueness. I've had so many conversations with people that they were in the condition of that fork, but they were still adamant that they had to continue to stay right there doing what they were doing. Unfortunate. Certainly, these folks are going to present with, you have no idea the pressures I'm under, have no idea the number of people. And there is a point to that. Sometimes in a professional's office, be it a doctor, be it a lawyer, their staff is propping them up, sometimes to a dangerous and even unethical or illegal standard, because their paycheck depends on the doctor staying at work. And I understand that when doctors are dealing with life and death issues, when lawyers are dealing with someone's life and liberty, certainly when pilots take off, that's a pressure that I don't want to deal with. I know myself that. I know that about myself. I don't want to deal with that. What you have to watch for is them becoming this guy, where nobody understands the responsibilities I have. Yeah, that's an overstatement, and we need to address that. Lots of folks are going to tell you they don't have the resources, whether it's financial, the time. There are legitimate points there. If they have arrived at your treatment center, I would move past that because they've already had to have this discussion with somebody. I would move past that and focus on, let's do the good work while you're here. I know that we are coming up on, well, we're past the hour, but I'm going to keep talking, and hopefully some of you are sticking around. When all else fails, when the law's against you and the facts are against you, you just argue. You just stand up and pound on the table. And you've all seen those folks in your office demanding to leave. They're going to sue this place. They're going to, all these things. And a lot of times that's hollow talk. Sometimes it's real talk. These folks, they can be litigious, but a lot of times it's just a whole lot of smoke and mirrors, bluster. Handling their objections, be prepared. It's when, it's not if. You got to have your stuff in place. You got to know what you're going to do when the threats come. You've got to know what you're going to do when the refusal to participate, when they try to monopolize your groups. You need to know what the bottom lines are from the referral agencies. And those referral agencies may not be, those referrals may not be agencies. They may be family. I don't know about you, but I've taken more than a couple of people back to treatment because they arrived home early and their spouse told them, there's not a place for you here. You're supposed to be in treatment. We need to know what those bottom lines are. Good interventionists may have given you a list of, these are the expectations that were set with them. You may need to use those, and you may need to enlist those referral sources if necessary. Lawyers are bad about this. They're going to throw objections, and they're going to argue that you don't have the proof. Their presence in your facility is sufficient proof. You don't need to have that argument with them. To the extent that you do have that argument with them, I would just return to, this is not a trial. We don't have a burden of proof. You're here. Let's get some help. Joining with them when it's clinically appropriate. Yeah, I know it's got to be a whole lot of pressure to have 100 and something people seated in a plane behind you and take off into the air. That's insurmountable pressure. That said, you know, it doesn't make you a special snowflake because there are lots of people that do it. So we need to challenge in an appropriate manner conduct that takes these things too far. Don't get into the objection battles and stay there. Stay true to your model. Be very careful when dealing with professionals that you're staying in your lane and you are not giving legal counsel. You are not giving medical counsel unless you're a doctor. If you're a doctor, yeah, feel free. But be very careful because those are the things that get turned around on you. You're the experts. Your team knows addiction and recovery. They may know the law. They may be the next Supreme Court nominee, but that's got nothing to do with getting healthy. That is the end of my content. This is my contact information. Christy already told you this is going to be up at their website. I'm happy to sit here and answer questions, have conversation as long as Christy will let us have the line. Otherwise, I really appreciate y'all all being here. If you've got questions, if you'd like to know the work that I'm doing with First Call, I would welcome your call at that number listed there. That's my cell. And that email is a good way to reach me. That's all I've got, Christy.
Perfect. Thank you, Chip. I do have a question here from Jonathan. He says one of the issues he has trouble with is losing the motivation and desire to even want to help people who perceive themselves as so entitled. He has trouble working with his own anger and irritation toward them and finds himself feeling disheartened to even want to help them. So perhaps this is a form of burnout. He knows that working with the client's resistance is part of the treatment, but he's wondering how you yourself deal with and work with your own resistance to counseling people with such entitlement.
One thing I would say is it's important to note that while a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors present and create big problems, some of them are going to present and be wonderful people. That said, you know, I think that the more that we can keep our boundaries clear as professionals, that this is about the disease. This is about this person's conduct. It's not about them characterologically per se. You know, sometimes you got to take a break, and sometimes you got to maybe change your role to the extent you can. That's part of why I'm at First Call. I founded First Call so I could do some different things. Working with lawyers all the time gets a little old. People who are, you know, terminally unique and continuing to have that conversation, I think within the policies and procedures of your program, that needs to be addressed. You know, to the extent that it is countervening work that you're trying to do with that person or with a group, I think it is perfectly appropriate to address that as, you know, conduct that will not be continuing if you're going to remain in treatment here. You know, we don't all have that option in our current role. I think for me as a counselor, I have been able to put up with a whole lot as long as I remember this person is ill. This is not about, this is not, you know, there is something in there that wants to be better. Maybe I wish I had a better answer for Jonathan. I know that entitled people can be very frustrating. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chip. I'm going to kind of run over a few things, just a couple reminders. This will be up on the website. Again, we so appreciate everybody's patience with us today with the technical difficulties. Thank you for hanging in there and listening. This was a great webinar to listen to today. We're so grateful for Chip's participation and for the support of everybody listening. His information is up. Please feel free to use it. If you need anything from me, please feel free to reach out to me. I am cweeks@harmonyfoundationinc.com. And we look forward to everybody joining us next month for our next webinar. Everybody have a great day, and May is on its way.
Thank y'all.